Welcome, not to another episode of Stammer Stream. That episode will be coming a little later on, but in the meantime, we discovered that several members of the cast of the podcast greatly enjoyed a certain game series slash anime slash manga slash doujinshi franchise that is currently taking Japan and, more recently in the past 3 years, the Western world by storm. Every single year since 2014, another iteration of a very interesting game franchise has come out called Danganronpa, otherwise known as Trigger Happy Havoc. And since all of us love bringing it up on the podcast so much, I thought it might be nice to have a little bonus episode about the games we love so much. This episode will be focusing on the second game.
This series is for Patreon supporters only, for the Patreon that we do not have.
Well, if we did, I would be siphoning all the money for my evil genius schemes.
So for that old guy who throws pennies at me on my way to the bus, this is for you.
Just give him the USB.
This also has the benefit that we won't have to stop all the discussions on Stammer Stream without talking about Danganronpa. Except we're still gonna do that anyway, because it pisses off Jenner. And that's funny.
Also because I'm taking bloody ages to even get started with the third game, because I'm lazy.
And considering how passionate the fan base is, this will probably be our most popular episode ever.
That would be great. I could probably hear Jenner scream from over here if that happened.
No! Wait, I'm making the money from this, but still, no!
I think Barnaby would be more annoyed because he doesn't like it.
And it's actually understandable. What I think one of the main themes that's probably going to come up in this episode is what an understandably and intentionally divisive series Danganronpa is. Because I want to start this off by sort of talking about what exactly it is for the uninitiated. So what Danganronpa is a visual novel / Phoenix Wright-esque trial series, usually set in a closed environment. The premise of each game is essentially a group of high schoolers from an academy called Hope's Peak Academy are trapped in a certain area and have to engage in almost sort of killing game in order to get out, where somebody murders someone else and then there's a class trial to try and figure out who it is. The gimmick is that each one of these high schoolers is extremely adept at a certain skill, making them the ultimate so-and-so, or in Japan, the super duper amazing, whatever. It's really, really long in Japan. Super duper high school level, I think it's called.
Yeah, I think that's it.
So, for example, you could have the ultimate Aikido master, the ultimate breeder, or even stuff that's a little bit nebulous, like the ultimate princess, the ultimate yakuza, the ultimate moral compass.
Well, that one made more sense in Japanese, since it was like the ultimate disciplinary committee member, which isn't really translatable.
True. But essentially, what draws a lot of people to Danganronpa is, despite the very dark premise, there's a lot of silliness to it, there's a lot of weirdness, which I think separates it.
It's very campy.
Exactly, which separates it from a lot of its influences. Because a lot of the series that, if you read into the Danganronpa series, you find out what influenced them, I actually hate. I hate Saw. I hate Cube and stuff like that. I hate a lot of them because it's just bleakness and it's just, torture porn to some degree. Danganronpa isn't that. There's a lot of campness. There's a lot of winking at the camera.
I mean, the deaths are all very over the top and silly, and some of them don't make any physical sense. Whenever they show blood, it's always bright pink.
Yeah, I think that was to circumvent the ratings a bit. And I'll also mention that why I like this, what puts this over Phoenix Wright in one aspect. Now, before anyone starts anything, I love Phoenix Wright series. Just this one aspect is done better here. Is that everyone who dies, whether through the trial or is murdered, you know them. You've been with them for a good while. Whereas in Phoenix Wright, they're always someone you only just met or have never met. So the death itself is never really impactful. Whereas here,
and sorry, you go first.
yeah. So in here it might be like, okay, let's see chapter 4, and oh god, Nekomaru's dead!
Spoilers, by the way. I think we should.
Yeah, like
Spoilers.
we're not gonna discuss
Put that in
those in
the
a game,
video
in the
description.
podcast all about this one game.
Yeah.
We could even call it the Danganronpa 2 Spoilercast.
Yeah, exactly. But what I think, to give a comparison, because a lot of people say like, well, I don't really get the appeal. You're just kind of waiting for characters to die. That's actually a very common thing in media right now. If you look at if you look at shows like Game of Thrones or Walking Dead, that is a lot of the appeal when you really come down to it. Sort of wondering who's going to survive, who's going to make it to the end. And what I think Danganronpa does so well is not only does it establish always a very, very memorable cast, but they establish interesting dynamics, interesting character quirks throughout, so that even if it's the first person who gets killed or the first murderer who ends up getting punished, there's always a connection with them. There's always an understanding of who they are. Like, for example, in Game of Thrones, it's not like, oh no, so-and-so, the knife dude died. Oh no, not that guy. You know, in here, you know, as Grail so rightly pointed out, you really know who all these characters are.
So, Nova, I believe you had some topics ready, so shall we move on?
I do. So, Danganronpa always has a very large cast of characters, and I think probably on par with the class trial gimmick, which is the most well-known gimmick of the game series. The characters are what we always come back to. There's always a bunch of murmurs, like when we see the designs for the new characters coming out. Oh, what's their talent going to be like? Oh, what are they going to be like? So I thought we'd start out with who are our top 3 least favorite characters, because I want to start on a low note and go to a high note. So I'd say who are our top 3 least favorite characters in the game.
And just for reference, are these ranked, or can we just say them in any order? Because I don't really. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I ranked mine, but you don't have to have them in an order.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
For example.
Yeah, you go first.
Sorry. Okay. For example, my number 3 least favorite, and this is where all the dislikes in this video are probably going to come from, if we had any.
Probably not, since we both know you're wrong.
Oh, bring it the fuck on.
Oh, I will!
This is going to be fun.
Is Chiaki, who, and I want to point this out, there are a lot of characters in the second game who, though I'm not huge on, I don't actually hate. I don't hate Chiaki. And we'll bring this up when other characters come. I don't hate Akane, even though I find her slightly annoying sometimes. I don't I get slightly annoying. I still love Akane. But I don't hate Chiaki. Yeah, I think she's great too. We'll get to her later. But there are, like, I don't hate Chiaki, but there's reasons why I'm not as big on her as the other characters. I do, however, hate my number 2, which is Monami. I fucking hate Monami so much. And then number 1, and I'm not breaking any new ground here, is Hiyoko. Hiyoko, to me, adds nothing to a class trial. She's just...
a bitch.
Other than characters who come up a little later on, or even early in the franchise, like Miyu, who, even though they're, very loud and very angry, at least have a fun character gimmick that makes them memorable. Hiyoko only exists to say horrible things to other characters and get no comeuppance over it.
Well, I mean, chapter 3.
Not directly. We'll get to that. I know what you guys are talking about, but that's not a direct comeuppance. You would say that's more coincidence, as I would say. Yeah. But anyway, so that's my list.
Well, if we move on to mine, because we're just gonna have some similarity, my number 3 is Mahiro, and that's more just because I don't have too many that I don't like, and I never remember anything about her. I just remember she was a photograph chick, and I forget everything else, including her name. I had to look it up for this list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, she's just boring. My third one is Mikan Tsumuki, because she's kinda crazy. Like, and also feels like she's really heavily trying to appeal to some particular fetish. Like with that overly clumsy, overly apologetic stuff.
This
I have
this
a
is
friend
where
who very adamantly defends said fetish.
yeah, this is where we're gonna have some discussion later on because I actually really like Meekin.
Yeah, same. I don't really like her, but I quite like as the game went on. I she grew on me, especially with the case very related to her.
Yeah.
I'll just say, never stick your dick in crazy.
Oh, not in that
then
way.
again,
Jeez.
my number one choice, no news here. It's Hiyoko.
Yeah.
What a bitch. You contribute nothing. You just verbally abuse everyone, especially someone who's done nothing to you. I am glad what came of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shall I do my bottom three now?
Sure.
Okay, so my number 3 was Kazuichi, because he's like... He's not the worst, but I found his gimmick of always lusting after Sonya got really annoying towards the end, especially like when it was in the case, I think it was case 4, like I really started to grate on me. And like, he was never like redeemed in any like satisfying way for me. Like I didn't feel like he went through much of a growth. And by the time he's one of the surviving cast, and I can't for the life of me know why. I'm like, I like all of these other guys, even if some of them aren't as interesting. Like Akane's a very simple character, but I find her likable.
Yeah.
Kazuichi, I just don't find that at all.
Well, I'd say
his
survival was mostly due to patterns repeating between the first and second game.
Of one useless motherfucker making it to the end.
That lead man from the first game.
Well, I mean, think about it. The survivors were the... Let's see. Yeah, main character, of course. The one weird guy who's supposedly some bro of yours. Then the one sports girl with dark skin. The one who used to be really antagonistic towards everyone, whether Fujihiko or Byakuya.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll just
one
say
weird chick being Sonia, or then what was that serial killer's name?
Genocide to Show.
No, I mean when she wasn't a serial killer.
Toko.
Yeah, Toko. And then the last survivor. Yeah, there's not much connection there.
Yeah. So my second pick is Mahiru. I actually like her a little less than Grail, because to me, and this kind of ties in with why I don't dislike certain other characters as much as you guys. Someone who is memorably sort of obnoxious can be a more worthwhile character to me to someone who is just boring, and that is the thing. I feel like in a series like Danganronpa, which like relies on being so zany, Mahiru leaves so little of an impression, and I think that's kind of a knock. Then my number 1 is Teru, because he just had a one-off gimmick that even Kazuichi, like, I felt like his gimmick of lusting after Sonya was given time to breathe. Teru got killed off so early on in the game that he was just kind of annoying for a bit and then just died. So
and that's probably why he's not on my list, since I didn't have time to get annoyed with it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he was gone so quickly. I was like, I mean, you had the character, he's gone now. I found him funny once or twice, so I guess I can't. Like, don't get me wrong. If he was still around by, like, the 4th trial, I'd be like, God, someone murder this guy. But
yeah, I think if he was around and had not developed like some other characters that I really love.
Yeah. Also, I'm just going to contest the point about Hiyoko. First of all, I do think she is quite memorably and entertainingly shitty to people. Like, she has a like laugh and she pulls all these big facial expressions, and like to say that she didn't get comeuppance in a gratifying way, she got one of the most gruesome deaths of the whole game. I think that's pretty justified comeuppance, personally. But
yeah, it is. It does not mean I suddenly like her.
I would say, when I say she doesn't get comeuppance, I mean that within the writing of Danganronpa, if you actually look at like the 1st and 2nd trial, it's odd in the sense that like her insults are the only things that never really get responses. Like, she'll say something horrible, like, oh, Kazuichi, go fuck yourself. And then someone will be like, anyway, moving on. I'm like, wait, we're just going to let that hang there? I'm not sort of talking because yes, she dies in the third chapter of the game, but I'm more talking about the fact that for some reason no one seems to want to acknowledge how horrible Hiyoko is.
Yeah, even like you said, Miyu. Like, yeah, she's horrible, but people acknowledge it and tell her to shut the fuck up.
And she also has the really entertaining gimmick of, unlike Hiyoko, she's actually a huge coward, so every single time she'll actually get comeuppance, she'll shrink up and almost pull a Mikan, which is entertaining to me. With Hiyoko, I guess I just can't take so much negativity always there, and this is going to come up again when we talk about the third game. I find characters who fake cry all the time to be annoying as shit.
So you're not a fan of the one character I actually am quite a fan of.
Oh, we're going to have a discussion about that, trust me.
Yes, we are. And depending on what you thought of the ending, that one too.
Can we not?
Yeah, we're not going to get too
steer
far
this
into
away
that.
from this discussion.
There's a very good reason we haven't mentioned names. Don't worry. We're not talking about the third game at all. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make passing mentions, as in, I would have hoped that in one bonus scenario where Hiyoko is involved, the other person involved would have crushed her to a pulp.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was perfect chance for it to happen, and they missed it.
Yeah. But so in terms, so that's sort of, I think that's all to be said about Hiyoko, honestly, because there's not, whether or not you like her or you dislike her, there's really no depth to Hiyoko. So there's not a ton of... what I would say is I'm going to bring up Monami very briefly, just because, to me, I only dislike her, because I don't think she added much to the trials, and at least in the English version, I found her voice to be very annoying. And this isn't an indictment...
I did not play the game. I did not play either game in English, so...
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And this isn't an indictment of the voice actress. I want to say the voice actress is very good. I just didn't like the voice very much. And personally, and this is something we'll talk about again in the third game with some other characters, I don't think her addition added much to the class trials as a whole.
Yeah.
So to me, she was just kind of a gimmick character. That's really all I have to say.
I think that is the thing, is that each game introduces some gimmick characters. Like I know I was steering it away from discussion of it because I have played the early parts of the game. The Mono Cubs are very similar in V3.
Yeah, they really don't serve much of a purpose.
Yeah.
I just hope they would die.
Yeah, really. Okay, I don't mind that personally. Like, it's just kind of, they're just the surface level mascot characters to be there to have fun little asides. Like, I always found it I liked how creatively weird the fights between Monami and Monokuma got. As a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll mention that I also didn't mind Monomi because she was mostly in the background, just kind of passed through my senses. Except Monocobs, those guys were always stealing the spotlight from the start of the show, Monokuma.
Yeah. We'll talk a bit more about them next time.
Yeah.
I suppose. But while we're here, the only two characters I think we haven't gotten too deep into on the worst list. The first is Mikan, and what I'll say is
I'm gonna request that we save Chiaki to the best list because I feel like we can get the other side of the discussion there. But
that's fair. Right. That's fair. I mean, we can do the same with Kazuichi if you'd like. But for Mikan, I like her quite a bit. I think like it because she's very much meant to be that deconstruction of that trope. So a lot of the time, it's all so over the top that it's played for comedy, not in. Okay, this is hard to say because it is meant to be exploitive, but that's kind of the point. And when she does actually get her freak out,
it's amazing.
It's actually the only one we get during this game. We have one that I think rivals it in the third game, which I'm not going to talk about. But she has really the only insane villain freakout of the entire game, and it's insanely entertaining.
And, I just loved it, because she's kind of been this wilting flower character, and she's kind of used it to get sympathy, and now she's very blatantly trying to do that. but with clear malicious intent, and it's just she isn't able to put up the facade anymore. And like, also, this is another thing just about the format of the game that's so cool, which is why I don't think it translates that well to anime. Is like the way that the characters have very jerky animations, and you could just have like words flying across the screen in very manic ways, and it suits those kind of freak out scenes super well.
Yeah.
I mean, they never really have animations. They just have still frames they switch between.
Yeah, they switch between the still frames.
Yeah.
Just a sec, I gotta step off for 3 seconds.
Okay.
Oh yeah, of course. So it's tricky to have this discussion with the one person who had them without the one person who had them on their list.
And
But I think what... Oh, excellent. But I don't think there's a ton else to say, at least in the sense of, like, I like her quite a bit, and I do enjoy the fact that with every single Danganronpa game, you can kind of look at the cast and sort of point out, like, okay, that person's probably going to kill someone at some point. And I think with every exception, I think I've gotten at least 2 right in every single game, but Mikan surprised me. And that's something that I always really appreciate whenever one of these games come out. Is like something that actually throws me for a loop a little bit.
yeah, as for me, Mikan, at first I kind of liked her, but I think the gimmick was just taken it took a step too far, and then just kept going for a few miles.
That's fair.
Like, you remember Chapter 1 when she fell? That was around the time I was starting to think, okay, this might be... And then Chapter 2, they just kept going, like... She's like, oh, should I strip? Oh, please don't torture me.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that.
If they just, if
Sorry.
they just dialed her back a bit, I think she might have had a shot at ending up on the other list.
I think with a lot of characters like that, it really does balance on what you find funny and what you find annoying, and it's something that I'm going to bring up when we get to Kazuichi, is that I think with a certain Danganronpa characters, it really is that difference, like, do you find this joke really, really funny, or does it start to grate on you very quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, Hifumi in the first game really started to grate on me.
Yeah. Oh, God, I forgot about that guy. Yeah. So with that said, now we get to move on to the realm of positivity, punctuated by 2 big disagreements that I know we have. So we're going to talk about our favorite characters in the game, or as I like to call it, Gundam Tanaka is the greatest character in this entire franchise. Fight me,
Fuck you,
motherfuckers.
no, he's not. That goes to
Yes,
Kaito.
he is.
Kaito is the greatest one.
Kaito ranks a pretty solid 4th for me.
No,
Actually-
he's number 1. And if you disagree with me, you are wrong.
Actually, you know what? He's probably 3rd. Come figure it. Alright, so just going to go through the list. Mine's pretty simple. I've changed it around slightly as I've started realizing. So I think what it probably is... No, it's probably the same. Sonya Nevermind is my number 3.
Good.
Kazuichi Soda is actually my number 2, and I have history for this.
Okay, I'll be interested to hear that.
It's actually a history reason, it's not being the character. And number 1 is Gundam Tanaka, who I absolutely adore so much.
Yeah, he's I'll spoil, he's my number 1 as well.
Yeah, he's my number 2 because...
We all love him.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
my 3rd one is Nekomaru Nidai. He's the
Oh,
sporty
yeah.
guy always, big sports buff, and he was willing to sacrifice himself for the others a few times, actually. Second
Yeah.
one, Gundam, for mostly the same reasons you guys had. But my number 1 is Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu. Because I feel he had the most complete arc of anyone in the game. Starting off with Chapter 1 and 2, he's kind of this rough guy who just wants to tell everyone to fuck off and leave him alone and saying he's gonna kill someone. And then the trial of Chapter 2 happens and he changes around completely after that event. And he starts interacting with others and even gives some good advice in Chapter 4 when he tells Akane to make sure Nekomaru knows how thankful she is because he never got the chance to tell Peko that. Just for the fact that he came so far throughout the game that's why he's my number one. And his free time went to pay the guy I would like to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
I'll get into mine.
Mhm.
So my number 3 is Chiaki, and like similar to why Jonas only put her at like his third least favorite, I only put her as my third favorite because there are a lot of problems with her as a character, which I'm sure Jonah will get into in a second. Like she doesn't really have any flaws, which is by design because she later on does turn out to be an AI, and she is a very deliberately catering towards gamers who are playing the game. With that said, I'm the kind of person who doesn't mind when a character doesn't have any serious or knocking flaws if I find them likable enough. A good example is Ryder from the series Fate Zero. He doesn't really like Fate Zero. I won't get into it, but basically, he doesn't have. It's kind of an action show, and he doesn't really have any notable faults that are really set him back in the show's events. And he has quite an overpowered ability, but he's also a very charismatic and fun guy to be around, and he's a really great support to another character in the series, Waver. And so he's endearing on that level. And I think, in that sense, Chiaki, I think the character I'd most liken Chiaki to is Nia from Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann, where, like, she's quite simple by design, but she serves very well as a support to either one character, or in this case, just to the rest of the characters. And I just find her quite sort of likable in a very simple way. Moving on from that, my number 2 is Fuyuhiko for similar reasons, and my number 1 is Gundam. The thing is, I actually agree with Grail that Fuyuhiko got a much more developed arc, but Gundam, to me, I just love that kind of zany, over-the-top personality. Yeah. I love that he's like a Pokemon trainer, but for hamsters and just animals. And he also has such an amazing death in this case.
Yeah, probably my second favorite execution.
I'll get, because I have a lot to say about Gundam and why I love him so much. But I guess my quick response to Chiaki, and I'm not going to go very far into this because I don't really have a vitriol here. I think my issue is just, I don't actually find her that memorable, and the Mary Sue tendencies started to bother me at points, if only for the fact that it started to form a very clear pattern within the trials. Is every single, at least twice a trial, Chiaki would be like, oh, I figured something out. Look towards the main character. But have you? And just like, wait a moment. And it's weird because it's the exact same thing Nagito was doing. But in Chiaki's case, it seemed to be heroic because Chiaki's Chiaki.
No, I disagree with that. Nagito was very deliberately doing it in a shit-stirring way, whereas Chiaki, it always came off very much like she was earnestly trying to help.
The thing is that it's the same technique, which is like they figure out something, but they just kind of don't tell you, so you have to figure out themselves. And it's also that
I'd almost chalk that up to the fact that it is a game and needs to have player input.
It is a game. It is a game, but
I mean, Kyoko did the same thing in the first game.
Somewhat, but there are different. I'm not going to get into the first game here, but I have my issues and positives and why I think it worked better there. But there are also moments where they would just give her really weird dialogue that I didn't really understand, and that the game was sort of like, agree with her. I'm like, no. Like, there was one moment, I think, in the fourth trial, where Gundam, like, they're talking about the elevator. And Gundam's like, there's a lot of weird stuff here. Was that room really an elevator? And then she's like, you know, when you find stuff that you don't understand, it's better to focus on the good stuff rather than the bad stuff. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Weird because...
Yeah. Her character is also meant to be a bit, I don't want to use the A word, but,
no, I get
unusual.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, it's just such a weird point to make, specifically in this game. And it's even weirder because, like, 1 minute later, you're like, oh, wait, Gundam was right. The room wasn't an elevator, only the floor was. So there's just moments like that where the dialogue for her character just seems so odd, and not in a way where that's the point, which is what your point is going to. There are times when Chiaki does something odd, and I'm like, okay, she's supposed to be very socially awkward. That's the point. But there are other moments like that where the game is trying to get you to agree with Chiaki, and I'm sort of saying, no, this is the same thing, and the split isn't quite right here. And that's sort of my issue with Chiaki, is that I don't think she's a bad character necessarily, but I think there are moments when she's very badly written, where you can it's one of the only cases in Danganronpa where I could tell that the writers were very clearly sort of hitting me over the head with like this character, like this character. So
and
you'll be
works
really
really well with me because I'm the otaku with a very big moe gland.
Which is fair. And again, the point I always want to make, whether it be Stammer Stream or Danganronpa, if it works for you, it works for you. For me, I felt the emotional manipulation a little bit too much with this character, which is why I don't think I got into it much.
It was definitely there. I won't deny it.
The same reason I hated Mikan.
But if we're gonna get into some other favorites, on the flip side, I adore Sonya. I think what I like about her so much is just the fact that she surprised me so much. When I first saw this character of like the ultimate princess, I was waiting for another like hoity-toity, holier than thou, extremely egotistical character. But instead, I got this really quirky, really funny, really energetic, and genuinely intelligent character. Who always adds so much to class trials, who's always a really entertaining person, and who, in my mind, has, and I will admit, and I'm saying this mostly for Grail's sake, almost tied for the most interesting romance in the history of Danganronpa. I would say that the third game has one that's very, very close. But I think that the relationship between Sonya and Gundam is so bizarre, but it works so well. When you see how these two characters match up with each other. And it's one of those relationships that's not really hit over the head. And I'm not saying this in a bad way, because I think that like there are relationships in this game that are pushed forward very much in front of your face, like Peko Yama and Fuyuhiko, and I love that relationship too. But the slow development that we got here, very much in the background, is something that I was really surprised by and why I really enjoyed, and I'm very much happy that Sonya made it to the end, because I thought this was a very fun character to follow.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, she didn't make my list, but I agree with everything you said. I really like the cast of this game, so, it's kind of an embarrassment of riches to pick 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, for me, Sonya was always just also kind of there in the background. I never hated her. I'd say I like her if I had to say I like or dislike, but she just never did all that much to me. Being kind of quirky, but not really getting that much depth.
Yeah. So before we all talk about the character that I think we'll probably all have a ton to say about, there's somebody we haven't talked about yet, who is the awesomeness that is Nekomaru. So let's bring him up.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, he sacrifices himself basically 3 times. First, to protect Akane from Monokuma's rocket launcher. Or was it a bazooka? Either way, he just throws himself in the way and it doesn't immediately kill him. Like, this dude probably has literal abs of steel. At least after his sacrifice, since he gets made into a robot. Yeah, that happens. Danganronpa's weird if you haven't figured out. And then he throws them in front of it again, though this time literal abs of steel, so guess he didn't have them before, since now it does nothing. And, like we all love Gundam, but his crowning moment of awesome was aided by Nekomaru, since he too was ready to throw his life on the line so that so that someone would live on.
Yeah, definitely.
He was always trying to. His life pretty much was being the manager, trying to assist others to be the best they could be. And I have to bring up this moment from the side games of Danganronpa 3, where you have some of the cats interacting in peaceful environment. When he has his moment with Gonta, he just goes to his bug exhibit, and there he asks, like, have you ever played sports? Gonta says, "Not really," and Nekomaru's immediately like, "Yeah, I can already say you're going to say no to me. I was gonna ask if you'd be coached by me, but I see your passion to this, so I'm not even gonna bother trying to take you away." He's just that cool of a dude that even though he wants everyone to be their best, he sees the passion one pours into their talent and just lets them go. And still stays around to look at all the bugs because he's already there. This dude
See, I love that. I'll probably bring this up more when we talk about the third game. The interaction between Gonta and Gundam is the cutest thing I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
That was probably my second favorite of Gonta's interactions, but I just prefer the one he has with Nekomaru.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love Nekomaru too. I think he's a really, really entertaining character. I think when he's not there for the third trial, his presence is definitely missed. Because, again, he's a really good energy to have around. His design is incredible. And he's definitely one of those characters where when he got taken down, it was like, well, I did not expect that. Okay.
Yeah. But that case was one of the best in the game for both the murderer and the murdered. So
definitely. Hovin, anything you want to say about Nekomaru before you?
Shout out to Mechamaru when he transformed into a robot. That was amazing. And he had the drill chin.
That was great. So, now we come to my favorite character, honestly, in Danganronpa as a whole. The third game has some people who get damn close, but my favorite is Gundam Tanaka. His design... Oh, wait, I just realized. We never had the Kazuichi discussion. Oh. I know I just said... I'm going to do the Kazuichi discussion first, because I'd rather end this section of the podcast on Gundam than on the Kazuichi thing. The reason I like Kazuichi is, when I first saw him, I really liked his design. I thought this was a really interestingly designed character, but I also like that, unlike Mondo, who sort of looked like this really tough, gruff guy and was, Kazuichi is this sort of cowardly guy, but at least in the sense that I feel like he's one of the few characters who's meant to be the main character's friend and actually makes sense in that role. Like, I never cared about Hagakure. I never got the relationship between Hagakure and Naegi. I never thought that was really much of a thing.
Wait, there was a relationship between the two in friendship?
See? Like, you never... Like, it's something that, like, is hinted at in the game, but you're like, I don't think there is. But with Kazuichi, I got it. I thought that there was an actual friendship between him and the characters, and I found that once the game... pauses in his constant lust for Sonia, there actually is a very interesting character here. There's a very earnest person. And I think that his backstory is very simple, but lends a lot. And I think one of the reasons I like him is I was waiting for him to die this entire game. So I was like, okay, now he's going to die. Okay, now he's going to die. Okay, now he's... Wait, he lives? What the fuck? Like, I was so pleasantly surprised by the fact that he didn't die. And look, I'll admit, the lusting after Sonya stuff can get annoying sometimes. I think I would have been more annoyed with it if I didn't already like the canon relationship there and found it funny. The fact that, like, the canon relationship between Gundam and Sonya is so concrete, and Kazuichi's still over there in the corner like, but I still have a shot, right, guys? It's like, no. Like, just because it was... Unlike certain other relationships where both characters are single and, some of the fans are like, but it could still happen. I just love the fact that it was so concretely like, no, you have no fucking chance. Again, I like the character fine. I think going back through the game, I can see a lot more of the flaws with him, but I think he's just somebody who I was attached to a lot when I played it for the first game, and it just kind of stuck around. Now we get to talk about Gundam Tanaka, the Forbidden One!
Yes!
Fucking love this guy.
I spent a whole week after finishing this game retweeting the Gundam Tanaka quote spot.
Oh, my God. I mean, first thing to talk about, I would say the third game probably has the best voice acting in the series, but Gundam Tanaka's voice actor is awesome. He is just having the time of his life with this character. Hello?
Yep. Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah.
So, and also, I have to mention that I read on this, so I'm not taking credit for this part, but you can read a lot into what he says in his free time events. Like, he says he's the son of an angel and a demon, which, you know, could be that typical his character persona, but might also mean that he had, like, a good relationship with one parent and a bad one with the other. Like, maybe he was an unwanted child, one born out of wedlock. And when he talks like he has a barrier around himself and any who touch him gets poisoned, it might mean he was very lonely and just made that excuse that there was a reason no one would approach him. And he mentioned he liked to talk to teachers a lot more than the other students.
Yeah, and it's also just that, like, you find out little bits of his backstory more and more, which help endear you to the character a lot. But during class trials, he's just so much fun. He's such a great energy to have around. His laugh is just so enjoyable. And whenever you do hang out with him on free time events, it was one of those few times I found, like, my perception not matching up with, like, Hajime, because Hajime is obviously, like, the audience stand-in. But all the time he was like, wow, this guy's weird. And I'm like, this guy's awesome! Like, he's so goofy, but he's so funny.
Well, I mean, if you knew him in real life, you'd probably think he's a weirdo.
Oh, probably. But yeah, I think he's, and what I'll say, what I think like him, I think his character arc is very solid, but very subtle, within in the sense that, like, he's very much a lot of a loner, but a lot of the time, slowly but surely, you'll see him start to hang out with the rest of the group a lot. In particular, in the fourth chapter, when he starts specifically going off with Sonia a lot, and it's in the fourth, a lot of fourth trials in Danganronpa have a very high. Actually, I'm not going to say that because I think it's probably a slight spoiler for the third game. But what I'll say, yeah. But what I'll say, or Gundam is, a lot of the time people argue that Danganronpa isn't very replayable because you really have to experience the trials. Gundam's fourth trial is incredibly replayable because as you're looking through it, you're realizing, oh wait, he's actually kind of helping you throughout the entire thing. Which is something that you can't really credit any other character with doing. Is that throughout the entire time, Gundam's bringing up other points, saying like, but do you know this yet? And then offering another point to go through. And it's so interesting to replay, in the sense that he's a character who's so heavily trying to help you along the way. And it makes perfect sense for the character.
Yeah, but that also brings up, that might be not as good a point for me, because I think we could just spoil about one thing about the fourth trial right here, that Gundam is the killer, but he did it because basically they were trapped in a tower, and Manako was saying like, okay, there's no food here and no one is getting out until there has been a murder. So you can either kill someone or starve to death. Take your pick. And Hajime is pretty much telling everyone he'd rather starve to death and start getting a lot of traction, but Gundam don't play that way, man. He starts thinking like, it's human arrogance to think that I would give up on life rather than fight for it if it means murder. And he's willing to fight for his life by any means necessary, as well as everyone else's. So, in the end, it's left pretty ambiguous whether he was like giving up to let everyone live, or if he was still fighting for his life. But if he was like trying to guide the trial, I think that makes it too clear.
That's the thing. I was pretty sure that he was actually guiding people along. That he was actually, because the thing is that there are two parts to that relate to that. One is that he chose the only person who he knew would probably share his philosophy. he didn't choose somebody like Kazuichi or, I guess to some degree Fuyuhiko, somebody who he could probably take down a lot easier. He chose Nekomaru, somebody who he thought would share his philosophy in this case and would actually be willing to sacrifice themselves as well. In the end, I think why Gundam still fights in the end is per that philosophy, that idea of like, no, I'm not just going to give up here. I have to keep fighting, even in this case, the class trial, otherwise that makes me a hypocrite. And something that I don't think is ever fully brought up, but is kind of awesome, is that even though Gundam sort of talks all this crap about, having these dark powers and being the strongest person ever, he does actually defeat Nekomaru.
Well, I'm not sure if he would have won without the sleep button. Like, if Nekomaru was still in human body, he probably would have been the winner.
Possibly, but it is sort of one of those cases where, and this is actually a theme that goes through even to the anime, Gundam does actually do ridiculously badass things. You just never see them, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, his execution too is like probably my second favorite in the series.
Mm-hmm.
And
no, it's great.
Yeah, and even I read small comment like his spell probably succeeded. Like, he wasn't trying to stop the rush. He had accepted his fate there. His spell was for what happens after his death. So, do you really think the Dark Lord like Gundam would be sent to heaven? No. He did that so that he could look after animals even after his passing.
That's a pretty awesome theory. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, and again, not my theory, not taking credit for this.
Yeah.
There's some random YouTuber I don't remember.
But no, I absolutely adore Gundam. I think he's such a fun character. I think that every single time he shows up, he's memorable, he's enjoyable, and he has a fantastic romance with another character that is canon, and because spoilers for the anime, they all live in the end, is still going on, which I think is great.
Yeah, and if we're gonna end, I want to end it properly.
Well, we're not ending the podcast.
That's not him,
yet.
but if Gundam.
Oh,
that
yeah.
is why, until the very end, pride, conceit, courage, insolence, fearful of nothing, daunted by nothing. Let us laugh uproariously. That is Gundam Tanaka. I shall stick with my evil until the very end. Open sesame, pandemonium! I shall fill hell with true hell!
God, I love that character. So before we move on to the next section, I think we'll just do a quick, 3 words of all the characters we haven't mentioned so far. Just what we like of them, so I'll just run through them really quick. Ultimate Imposter, I like them. They were a fun addition to it. I like them quite a bit.
Yeah, he was really a good guy and was kind of killed too early.
I like that he was kind of
used more and get more about his feelings about being the imposter.
Yeah.
He was an interesting subversion of audience expectations because he appeared to be the only recurring character from the first game.
Yeah. Alright. Pekoyama, Ultimate Swordswoman.
She was a bit boring. She filled her role in the story fine, but there wasn't much to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think she gets more when you take her with Fuyuhiko. Once you know their, master-servant relationship and how both feel about that and what they want it to be. So yeah. I could like her.
Also,
I think... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Also, I just don't like her hair very much. I think it looks a bit naff.
That's fair. I think she's interesting when paired with Fuyuhiko. I don't think she's as strong a character though. Ibuki, the ultimate musician. I like her quite a bit.
I love her.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
like her as much as you guys, but I still like her. She's pretty energetic and pretty
She has a
funny.
flaming guitar. All her
I
songs
think
have really weird names.
Yeah, I think she's a lot of fun. I think she was a really, really great energy in the class trials. I was very sad when she died.
Same.
'Cause I was hoping she would
Yoko.
stick around for a while.
Ibuki.
Oh man, like son of a. All right. And I think the only person who we haven't talked about at all, which is fascinating because this is one of the most divisive characters in the entire series. None of us has mentioned Nagito at all.
Oh, I love him. He's like he's such a little shit,
Wait,
and he stirs everything up. Yeah, briefly. Like
We briefly touched upon Akane, yeah.
there's not really much to say.
Yeah, I like Akane fine.
Yeah, like
So-
I
I
think,
think-
and now,
yeah.
and that's also mentioned if we like Hajime, even though he is the audience insert.
I like him more than Naigi, is I'll say.
Yeah,
I
same.
would say my like of the protagonists climb with each game.
I was just about to say the same thing. I think the third easily has the best.
Yeah, that's
but-
because like I'm not actually because like I'm still getting into all the characters, but even early on I'm like, oh, the main character actually has a personality. Holy shit!
It's crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, Nagito.
Mhm.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
I really enjoy Nagito. He's a shit stirrer, and it makes the game all the better.
Mhm.
And his locked room case was super cool as well.
It was very interesting. I'll say that I think as a character he works better with the Japanese voice actor than the English voice actor, and this is true only once in a while. Because for the most part, I think the English voice cast is pretty awesome. But I think I found him slightly irritating only in the fourth trial, but that was the point. So I can't really knock him against
Yeah,
there.
I mean, that's what he
And I'll say
starts
that-
to make the whole heel turn.
Yeah. And I'll say one thing. I think he's a much better version of something that we kind of get in the third game. But like I said, we're not talking about the third game here. But
This is just becoming a meme, isn't it? It's like, and it's kind of like this thing in the third game, but we're not. Third game.
Well,
Like,
we
we've done
can't
that, like,
because
15
one of us
times
has
now.
been real slow while two of us binged it in a week, even though it was like
Sorry.
40 hours.
The
Yeah,
thing
I
is,
don't think we
with
really
the
have the high
Danganronpa game,
ground here.
it's like I literally just played through the first two. I'm a bit burnt out, like in a very short space of time.
no, I can understand that. I actually had to take a break because there was a moment in the. I'm not going to say what it is, but like the class trials are always depressing. There was one in the third game where I was just like, I gotta drop this for a little while. This is too much for me.
I like Nagito both in the hope and despair role, because in hope he's always still that wild card where you think, is this guy gonna go crazy? I feel he might go killing spree at one point. Like, if I lived next door to him in real life, I would just move out. I'm pretty sure one day he would kill me. And in despair,
I will say though, something interesting about Nagito. He is the only character in the entire Danganronpa series where I'll say I actually prefer the anime version of this character. I think the way he's portrayed in the despair arc, so like the backstory to this game in the anime, I think it's actually very, very interesting.
Okay, I've only seen 3 episodes of it, so.
Well, at some point we gotta do a podcast about that, because that's something that I think needs to be talked about a lot more.
So I can shit on that ending.
Okay. So we're gonna go through a couple quick things real quick. One thing, favorite class trial. What do you guys think?
Fourth.
Fourth for me too.
Yeah, okay.
It's
such a cool. It takes you into a completely different setting.
Let's
It involves
try-
the geography of the place. It has the one arguably sympathizable murderer, and yeah, it's just the best one.
Yeah.
So just let's try your favorite aside the fourth one, so we get some varied opinions.
That's actually tough.
Ah.
Maybe the fifth one.
For me, it's a tie between the
They're
fifth
quite-
and the second.
They're all pretty even ground for me, actually. I guess the fifth one, like, the way it's set up and the twist with it
Yeah, the
is
mystery
like
of
is the extra push. Yeah.
fifth one had the best mystery, but I think second one had the best character to it.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm gonna go with the third one actually. For my second pick. I thought it was definitely one of those ones where, for a pretty decent amount of time,
All the trials in this... Yeah. Sorry.
You're not even trying to find out who the killer is. You're just trying to be like, how the fuck did they do all this shit? So, like, for so much of the third trial, you're just trying to piece together how all of this even occurred. And then when you do finally find out who the killer is, and they start freaking the fuck out, it's so much fun. It's one of those times where you're like, oh no, this person definitely fucking did it. I just have to figure out how.
Yeah. Oh god, all the cases in this game, besides maybe the first one, which is just kind of a refresher, are just really good.
Yeah. I like the first one pretty decently, actually.
It's fine. It's just the most straightforward of all of them.
Yeah, true. I would say that this is probably the only game where I'd say, like, I really like every single class trial. Like, I really like every single one of them.
Which ones in the first game do you not like?
I guess it's hard to say do not like.
Or just
exactly. But I wasn't really big on the trial following Sakura Ogami's death. Is, I will say. I think a lot of when the actual mystery came up, it was kind of like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. Like, it seemed...
Actually, we can get into that. That is kind of what the last trial is in this game for me. In a sense that, like, they unload so much plot in the last hour. No, not hour, but, like, you know, the last trial, it is like, whoa, suddenly loads of plot.
That is actually what I am actually going to talk about the ending of this game to kind of end off the podcast. I think that is probably what's really gonna like swing people one way or another for this one. So I think there are two other things I want to bring up before. One is how do you like the way the actual trials play out compared to the first game? And I guess, Hovin, have you gotten to the first trial in the third game?
I've literally gotten to when the first person has been murdered. So yeah, okay. No, I haven't.
So we won't discuss how the gameplay changes there, but I'll say I like the trials in this game a lot more than in the first game. I think it's a lot.
I don't like the surfing thing. The mind actually. There's two things. First of all, there's a couple of generally speaking, the mechanics of this game are better. But I don't like the way Hangman's Bluff is, just because it's very frustrating and it's very easy in the first game, and I like that a bit better, even though it's ridiculously simple. Hangman's Gambit, yeah. And then the surfing got a bit annoying for me as well.
Yeah.
But I love the consent mechanic. That's really cool, and
that's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Was the memorizing brought in this game? Was that in the first game as well?
I think it was in the first game, but I'm not sure. I never played the first one. Yeah, I'll admit, I never played the first game because what happened for me was I saw the abridged series made of the anime. It was left unfinished, so I went to Wikipedia to read up on the plot because I got kind of interested. And now that I knew the whole plot, I just didn't see a reason to, play the game.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that convinced me to go back and play it, because I'd seen the anime, was I'd kind of forgotten how a lot of the cases went, and the second game got me into the swing of it. So
yeah, I'll say I'm not big on Hangman's Gambit or the surfing game, but I think the actual trial mechanics here are excellent. I love the fact that you can take other people's points.
Yeah.
And turn them into the truth bullets. I love the idea of agreeing with other people here and there. And it's one of those there are certain moments where you're like they sort of throw you in the spotlight. Like, who do you think did it? No, there were certainly some moments where I was there for like a minute or so, like, shit. Like, I have no fucking clue. But But I think that for the most part, it does give you enough information where you can really successfully, gain pretty good ideas of what's going on. And what I think I like most about this, a lot of the trials take place in different settings, which is actually pretty rare. Like, you'll have a trial outside at one point, you'll have a trial inside, you'll have a trial within the funhouse.
Yeah.
Which was so cool, and that was certainly one of those moments that helped the trials differentiate themselves.
The fact that it's on an island with very varied locations rather than just different bits of the school.
Yeah, which leads into my next point. What did you guys think about the island? Compared to Hope's Peak Academy as a location.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Yeah, I'll say it's kind of a two-pronged thing, even though I didn't play first one, but I'll still compare it to, let's say, the third one that also takes place in the academy and a little bit of surroundings. Because while this does give you a lot more varied locations and therefore more chances for different kind of murders, it also doesn't create such a hole that the academy setting does, where think that this is all in one place. Whereas here it feels like it's just different locations that have been put together
I think
like
for me
Lego.
For me, the issue is less cohesiveness and more like the thing that the first game's location had over it. There was a real sense of you're just stuck. You have no idea where you are. You don't know if the sky is purple. Like everything is shut off, and it's it's a bit more claustrophobic. I think the thing that this game does that the second game has over the first though is aesthetically the island is so much nicer to look at. It has a lighter. It's more easy on the eyes. The inside of Pope's Peak can look a bit garish.
I think what I'll say is that I think that over a long period of time, I started to get a little sick of just wandering around Hope's Peak so much, which is the point. It's meant to feel claustrophobic. It's meant to feel like you're trapped in there for a long period of time, so that when you finally get out, it means all the more. But what I liked so much about the island in this case is it has that same feeling, but very subtle, because you can see the sky, you can see these different areas and stuff, but there's still the idea in your mind that you are trapped here, and you're not going to be able to get anywhere. So I like that juxtaposition quite a bit. The idea of you're trapped in this area, in this beautiful, gorgeous area, but you are definitely trapped. And I think the third game took it a little too far. It's like, and you're in the giant bird cage too. It's like, fuck it, okay.
Well, I mean, the first game just didn't let you out of the building at all, so third one was a little more open.
Fucking is Doflamingo the mastermind? What the fuck are we?
But no, I made the One Piece joke when I got to that bit, and my roommate who just doesn't like One Piece just threw a shoe at me.
Yeah.
But one thing I'll mention is that traveling on the island sucks. Like, you just hold left or hold right. At least they had the quick travel option. Otherwise, I would have just hated that part.
I will say I love Hajime's running motion on the island because it's like ragdoll physics all over again.
Yeah, and I'll say that even if you have to travel some distance in the other games, at least turning around, going through the environments that change, makes it a little more stimulating than just hold this button until you reach the location.
Yeah, I could see that. I like the different islands gimmick. I think that's a fun sort of idea. I will say there are certain islands that I'm like, when I first see it, I'm like, oh shit, this is so cool. And then when I'm there for a little while, I'm like, actually, you know what, this is very underwhelming. Like the robotic Monokuma City was like that a little bit. Like when I first saw that, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. It's like Final Fantasy. And then the longer I was there, I'm like, okay, I'm getting really sick of this aesthetic real fast. So one last thing before we jump into the ending, and so the big twist of this game, everything that we find out. I'm just gonna look, because I have a list here. I know there's one last thing. Okay. For free time events, and stuff like that. How did you find those? How did you find them entertaining for the most part? Were they kind of like a chore to get? Because I think the way this can go wrong is if sometimes people feel like the actual visual novel style free time events are just a chore to get to the class trial, which I didn't really find in this game.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've not finished all the ones in this one because I did all the ones in the first game when I finished it, and then realized you could do that with this game too, and that's when the burnout hit. That still prevented me from getting too far in DRV3.
Mhm.
But the ones that I did were quite nice. Uh, of course, like Chiaki's at the very end. It's very deliberately playing to the otaku. It's playing to that audience, and I am that audience, so it works. Job well done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I want to get some more of the characters done because I want to see more of their roots.
Yeah, and I think it was mostly hits like Nekomaru's was great, Gundam's were great. I even like Kazuichi's those, even though you had more split opinion on him as a character. But
Okay, I
there were
haven't
a
done
few
any of
ones
his.
that did kind of fall flat on me, and those could be a pain to get through. But I liked having the free time and having some juxtaposition, like there is the part that gives you a little hope, and then they just hit you with the despair bat.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, so finally, we come to the ending of the second Danganronpa game, where essentially what we find out is that this is an entire game is a form of virtual reality made by the Future Foundation, which, though we thought was an enemy, is actually Naigi, Byakuya, Kyoko, and a bunch of other people trying to fight despair in the outside world. Because the entire cast of this game were actually the remnants of Despair, a terrorist group that used to work for Junko Enoshima. And this simulation was meant to be a way of recuperating them into the people they once were before Junko brainwashed them. Unfortunately, Junko put a virus into the game, essentially a virus of herself, that turned it into another killing game. So there is no real mastermind. It's just sort of a character who's always been around, but it's not one of the actual characters who's the mastermind. So what do you guys think?
Well, I'll just say that the virtual reality thing, I figured that out before the first chapter started because of the whole wireframe thing that happened before you got introduced to anyone. And then the old setting was kind of weird, so I thought, okay, I'm pretty sure this is all in virtual reality. I didn't really think on that too much after, but in chapter 5, chapter 6, I was like, yep, called it. And I do really like the twist that you are actually playing the bad guys, just not realizing it. Like, not just a bad guys, the biggest bad guys right after Junko Enoshima. Like, you had
your
all
posse.
despair. And that raised
Yeah.
all kinds of interesting points that the fucking third anime fucked up.
Yeah,
Fuck you!
that's the thing.
Sorry,
Okay,
that's
okay,
right
real
now.
talk. Okay, from what I've seen of the third anime, I'm
Oh
like,
god.
okay, so I'm already starting to get warning bells because the first episode came along and it's like we're fighting against the remnants of despair, and I see like evil versions of the characters from the first game. I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. We get to see them in action, and then we're immediately locked into a class trial that isn't really a class trial because it's just the Hunger Games. Yeah,
That's not
like
what my problem is with my
I'm already
despair arc.
yeah, I'm already starting to slip on the future arc. The despair arc, still enjoying that, but you know.
I love the despair arc if I'm being perfectly
Like,
honest, but I
it
think
had good
that's
things, but
that's a
the
podcast for another
last few
day.
episodes made me hate the whole fucking thing.
All right, I need to nag
Okay.
my friend to watch more of that. Anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, it did dispose a lot of information in the last chapter, maybe a little too much with just ramming it down your throat, though I think that might be a bit of a general problem with the series. That the last chapter just jams a ton of exposition on you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm.
I like the twist quite a bit. I will say that like just having like, and here's Junko again. Like, I mean, once you hear from the developers, you do get the impression that they were like, yeah, sorry, we know, we just couldn't come up with a villain better than Junko, and like that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, please just don't even comment on this, but I hope she isn't in the third game, because I was fine with the second go-around, but I'm gonna be a bit sick of her if she turns up again.
Totally understandable. Totally understandable.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, no, having the gimmick of her, just having this giant version of her and her on a TV, cool.
yeah. No, it is pretty fun. I will say though that I did find the ending where like you're just arguing against despair to be a little like it's fun. It's just not quite as strong as the first game's ending to some degree. But I will say that I did find Hajime's transformation toward the end to be something that I could really get behind. And the fact that you do find out that in the end, all of these characters did survive.
Yeah.
It is something that I can actually get behind. Like, oh, okay, it wasn't just another, killing game. This was an actual revival and recuperation that did end up working in the end. So, yeah.
All right.
So we'll see you again in 5 months for a V3 podcast.
and a 3 podcast. Again, the problem with Danganronpa 3 is that I'm watching it with a friend who's very sporadic and when he wants to watch it, and the problem with V3 is just, again, burnout.
Yeah, we'll get to it at some point, because my feelings on that game are still very, 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 very fresh, and I don't think they're gonna like fade at any point, because I have very strong opinions.
I too have to really think what I think of that game, because one element in it is what kind of tiptoes me around, which I cannot say anything about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's real painful when you got like one guy who's already played the game and you could talk to End about everything, and one guy who hasn't, so you can't spoil anything.
We'll talk about it in our own chat and stuff like that. So, like, if you want to vent out, man, because there's a lot to say about it, and I'll say it is maybe the only game in the entire series where I can say like, actually, you know what? I probably like the cast in 2 more, but that definitely 3 has a lot of like insanely strong characters in it. So I think you'll really enjoy it when you do get to it. But lastly, anything else we want to say just about the second game as a whole before we give it like a recommendation? I'd say out of 10, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that because scoring systems really pissed me off today.
Okay, never mind. No scoring systems.
I just generally don't get anything besides anime out of 10 as well.
Okay. Okay. Just give it, fine, just a recommendation then.
Yeah. I'd say I could recommend it. You just have to be able to at least tolerate visual novel elements because there's a lot of them. It does have some active scenes, but I'd say if you like Phoenix Wright, you'll probably like this. I know a few people I know one people who hasn't, but I'd still say like you gotta like visual novels to some extent because it's mostly that, but it gives a lot more than just visual novels normally do.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say if you like the first game, I'm of the personal opinion that I think this one is a lot better. I think the class trials are a lot more enjoyable and kinetic. I think that the characters as a whole are a lot more enjoyable because I think in the first game there were maybe a handful of characters that was like, yeah, I enjoy hanging out with these people. In this one, it's almost the entire cast that I adore. So I'll say that if you're just getting into it for the first time, like I said, you do have to be all right with visual novel gimmicks, but understand that the class trial gimmick is not that, and is very enjoyable. It is very kinetic. It is very fast-paced. It's extremely inciting. It's long. Like, for the class trials, as a heads up, these take probably a couple hours of gameplay.
Yeah, I think for me, Danganronpa occupies a sweet spot for me where there's enough engagement besides the visual novel segments for me to enjoy those visual segments. Another example of this that I played recently is Persona 5, and I'd assume 3 and 4 as well. I've only played a bit of 3, where like visual novel stuff on its own tends to lose me, but if there's some other way I can interact with things, that usually gives me the motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. If I were to give one criticism to this game, and it's only because I've seen how this can be done differently, I wish for the actual visual novel part, there were a lot more of multiple characters interacting. Because there were a lot of times when like you're just hanging out with Kazuichi or you're just hanging out with Akane, and I always thought it would be a bit more interesting. Okay, what if like you stumble onto this like gathering, like okay, it's Kazuichi and Gundam and Sonya, and they're all together, and maybe you like see their entire conversation. There's a little bit of that, but there's a lot more of that in the third game, and I found that to be a really, really enjoyable mechanic. So I wish that there was more of that in the second.
Okay.
Yeah. That's probably my one criticism, is there could be a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and then for me, it's just the last segment where you find out the truth. While fine, it feels like they condensed a lot of story into the back end of the game.
Yeah, it's long, and it's.
It didn't help that I did. It didn't help that I did basically the trial for case 5 and 6 back to back in one night.
Oh yeah, no, you can. I couldn't. I couldn't do that. So that's something. But no, it's a pretty dense blast of dialogue at the end.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's pretty much every Danganronpa.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I think that wraps up everything I need to say.
All right. So this has been the bonus podcast of Stammer Stream Danganronpa 2. To be clear, not the second episode of this podcast, because I'm not sure if we're ever going to do an episode for the first game.
Yeah, mostly because I haven't played it and really have no intention to.
Maybe me and Nova could do it on like a.
Maybe we'll do an episode on the Abridged series. Who knows? So.
Well, that was only 6 episodes, so.
Yeah, exactly. It was more of a joke. So see you guys next time for Stammer Stream, which I will not be on because I just found out the place I'm going to be staying at this weekend doesn't have internet. But I will hopefully be back the week after that. So, have a good time, everyone. This is Dr. Nova. Hovin with an H.
Oh, you were going to do all of us.
Okay.
You know what? Fuck it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.